Hi there. Welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. I am so glad you're joining me here today. Now, as you've likely guessed, my name is Denise Alvarez. I am your host. And before we dive in and start talking about the business of being an athlete in the equine industry and introducing you to my new friend, Nicole, I'm going to very quickly introduce myself and then we'll jump right in, just in case we're new friends. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and I am an equine business coach. And so through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream chasing entrepreneurs in the horse world to build and grow a sustainable business without burning out. Coaching has become my favorite thing to do, whether it is one-on-one or in a small group setting. And I do all of these things, including the podcast, so that you, as an equine entrepreneur, can be out doing what it is you love to do in the horse world. So whether you're behind the camera lens, at the computer, in the arena, in the barn, traveling as a whatever, right? Whatever you're traveling, photographers, body workers, all the things. Those of you who are small business owners and creating and serving in the equine industry, that is who I love to serve. And that's what what I'm here to help you do more of. Goodness, friends, we will get through this. It is my privilege, though, to also introduce you to new friends here on the podcast. And so today I'm doing that by way of diving into the business of being an athlete. So, if you are here because you have been trying to build a business around your riding or you have aspirations to do so, then this episode is going to give you practical, real life strategies that you can use no matter where you are in your journey. As you will hear from Nicole as she shares her experience, it is deep with more than 30 years in, and she has helped manage strategic partnerships for both athletes and brands. She has been an athlete herself that was competing, and so she brings a unique perspective on what it takes to approach your riding career with a long-term view, which you all know I'm a fan of because we're here to be growing sustainable businesses and having that long-term view. So we're going to go beyond results in the arena because this is the horse business podcast, right? So we're going to talk about what's required to create real business building opportunities. We're going to talk personal brand. We're going to talk audiences. We're going to talk authenticity and transparency and choosing which brands to work with and how brands choose which riders to work with. It's a great conversation, guys. You're going to walk away with a really clear understanding of how to position yourself as more than just a rider and how to really start building a business that's sustainable, strategic, and in line with where you want to go. You're going to love this conversation with Nicole. And to be honest with you, if you're saying, Denise, I typically listen to your podcast, but I'm just not sure if I fall into this idea of athlete, then I honestly think you're going to still love hearing Nicole's journey and that many of the takeaways that she shares can apply to you and your business as well. So I encourage you to give it a try. And then, of course, I encourage you to share it with somebody, especially if you know someone who is trying to build their business in this way. I really believe this practical episode is going to be a help to them. So I hope that you do share it. Really quick, before we jump into my interview with Nicole, I also want to make sure that you guys know I have a brand new free resource available to you as equine entrepreneurs. It is literally a roadmap to growing a sustainable business without burning out. So I'm going to give you some step-by-step things to consider and strategize for your business, regardless of the age or season of your business. If you are somebody who wants to grow something that is sustainable and growth matters to you, we're going to start foundation and we're going to build out from there in this roadmap, okay? So you can go to Storm Lily, that's Storm, LILY.com/map to go ahead and grab that free Equine Entrepreneurs Roadmap to grow a sustainable business without burning out. Super simple and easy to get. And I promise you, you know that just like you're on the podcast, my goal and my heart to give you practical, strategic help. And this roadmap is going to do that and meet you where you are and help you really audit and determine where you are and what gaps you may need to fill in. And of course, give you the next steps to do that. All right, guys, without further ado, let's jump in. I can't wait to introduce you to Nicole Graf. All right, Nicole, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so grateful for your gift of time.
Well, thanks for having me, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So we're going to jump into getting to know you. Like I said, I only know what I have learned online. So my audience obviously is just jumping in and saying, "Who's Nicole, and why are we learning from her about sponsorships and being an equine athlete and all of those things?" So before we get to the nitty gritty, would you tell us a bit about your background, your journey to horses, how you became an expert and a consultant, and what you're doing now? Now, let me tell you this too, okay? Because sometimes I ask that question and people are like, "Holy cow, that's a whole podcast episode, Denise." I realize that can be a big question. So you have full freedom to hit the highlights that you feel like set it up. But give us a good picture of what your journey has been.
Well, it has been a long journey and a whole diversified, background. So I'll try to make it short.
You're good.
But I'm from a non-horsey family. Always been obsessed with horses. Always wanted to compete and ride. My parents were generous. I found a horse. They got me a horse when I was 10. I've been riding since I was 6, and the horse was actually given to me, and she was amazing and taught me a lot. And so I was very grateful and thankful that they were supportive in that manner. But what that meant was there was no money for lessons, really. So I had to go and watch other people ride and learn and watch their lessons and try to implement that myself. So
Okay.
that in itself was a journey. And then, sort of did that through high school and everything, but it was also very much an entrepreneur at heart. My family's like that as well. So I, after high school, double majored and went to actually Johnson Wales University, where I could be an equine major, but double down and do business as well.
Okay.
So that was a special school because I went in with the intention of a major, which a lot of people don't know what they want to do or be. I considered
Mhm.
going to vet school because actually through high school, I worked as a vet tech and through college because I was passionate about the medical side of it, but I really didn't want to do 7 years in school. So I was more passionate than about business. So left Johnson Wales with an associate's and a business degree, graduated cum laude, and that gave me really great background on all things business and everything equine. And I was really lucky to have the opportunity to take a trimester abroad during my senior year. So having been brought up in sort of the very local hunter world,
Mhm.
I had opportunities to learn dressage and sort of expand into other equestrian disciplines. So when this opportunity came up when I was a senior at Johnson Wales, I decided that I would take the opportunity to go to England and do some eventing because I thought the pictures looked cool. Never even saw a cross country jump in my entire
Oh my
life.
gosh, that's awesome.
And but it really actually changed the path of my life.
Oh, wow.
And it really was an integral experience because not only did I meet at that training center, which was called Waterstock House Training Center, and that actually comes up to current day as of 2 weeks ago. But I met the most amazing people there, from all corners of the globe. All the students were young, now still friendly with them. They're all been on Olympic teams or
Oh,
different
wow.
aspects of equine sport itself. So that was really unique. And Beth Buchema, who was the head of the department at the time at Johnson Wales, we are still close friends, and I still now work with her to this day,
Oh, wow.
30 years
That's
on. Now
awesome.
I'm dating myself, right? Um, so everything I find in this sport, it's a small world, as
Yeah.
you have experienced. Things come full circle in a lot of ways, and your network is hugely important, and those don't go away unless you're completely leaving the sport. But I think within the sport, that's valuable, and that's something to always be remembered during your career. So, after I left college, I decided I'd go back to England because I fell in love with it so much and decided I would try eventing myself. So I went and based myself with Owen Moore, who was a top UK eventer at the time, who I met at Waterstock. The
Okay.
same with some other top athletes there. David O'Connor went and trained there and everything. So again, this is all a small network, but I stayed in the UK for 10 years and
Oh.
competed and bought a horse and decided that I didn't have a kamikaze attitude to do top level eventing. That's a whole other thing,
Mhm.
but loved the people, loved the sport. But my entrepreneurial side of me kicked back in, and back in the late '90s, developed the very first equestrian website and news service. So to do that, I this was before the internet was anything. There was still dial-up, and I decided I'm going to create a online magazine, a news service to let people know what's happening on all the corners of the globe, and focused on the
Okay.
three Olympic disciplines, eventing, dressage, and show jumping. So I then became a journalist. Um, and I was at I debuted at Badminton Horse Trials, and even at the media center. I was called Internet Girl because everyone thought it was a fad and a trend.
No way. Oh my gosh. So they were calling you internet girl.
Yes, I was Internet Girl. So they said, "Oh, I think this internet thing is going to be a fad," and I said, "I really don't think so." So so that was a horsenews.com, a domain I still have. It was called the Equestrian Times.
Okay.
I traveled as the first sort of journalist with my own little digital camera at the World Games in '98 in Rome. Nobody had digital cameras then. So I was creating, writing, taught myself the code, created all the web pages. It was a members only type of subscription based model.
Okay.
So that launched in '98. So that was kind of the first of its kind. Created the first virtual course walk at Badminton, Kentucky 3-day, all these places. So as a journalist, that was another whole, instead of working on the one side of the ropes as a groom, then
Mhm.
now I'm on the other side of the ropes as part of the media, which was a wonderful experience. And again, growing that network in then the media world. So in between, I had come back to the US, was working with horse sales and riding and competing, went back to dressage, which is my number one passion, and was actually competing Frisians as well. So that was a whole other aspect of the sport. And then I had left that, and I ran into Marty Bowman, who's a friend of mine of Classic Communications PR company, and really one of the first equestrian PR company in the US, dating back into the '80s. And I went on to work with Marty for 7 years as his head writer. Maybe it was even longer, and worked with all the top shows, athletes. I was head writer at the World Cup Finals in 2015 in Las Vegas. And so, again, that kind of brings you back to the media side of things and the comfort
Mhm.
level of working with the athletes, which is
Yeah.
super important. Um, Having then COVID hit, went
Yeah.
another way, ended up working with another tech company that was more of a online training platform. Again, going back to my entrepreneurial thing and the techie, and even helping develop other companies market, PS of Sweden. I was working for Riley, and now I am bringing everything full circle with my techie and my marketing with a Quest stick.
Mhm.
So I've kind of covered a lot of different paths, working, as a groom, then as the media, and then in PR and the marketing, and also the techie side. So
Yes, I
been a
love
great
it. It's rich.
journey.
It's yeah, it's so beautiful, and I love that because there's no such thing as a straight line for any of us, and so I think it is always so important to recognize that every entrepreneur has a unique journey, and even in that, so based on just what I know from your LinkedIn, right, you still do some consulting and things like that on the side as well. What does that tend to look like for you? What areas do you, like, enjoy the most, when it comes to consulting?
For consulting, I really have enjoyed, helping small businesses develop,
Okay.
and because a lot of them have been a little bit more niche, or they've been well known in one region or country, or maybe something that's Europe that's launching here in the U.S. because the markets are different, and I think the conversation can be different of how people do things in Europe versus how things are done in the U.S. I mean, this is a huge country. We have more disciplines than they have,
Mhm.
and it's kind
Mhm.
of speaking to that broader market in their own way, and having that conversation to for those targets, and making it relatable.
Okay. So when you say that, so give me a little bit of the specifics what that looks like. Is it in terms of just their PR presence, how they're marketing online? Athlete management, I know is something that you did list on your LinkedIn, but you haven't talked
hmm
about that. So tell me a little bit about, the nitty-gritty of that piece of it.
So I think with athlete management, and some are easier to work with others, it's always a little challenge. And I think with athlete management, what the big thing is is time for them.
Mm,
They are really focused on their goals, meaning, they've got competitions. And I think for athletes to be successful, we know the horse world is really challenging. There's distances, there's, depends if it's a show jumper or dressage
mhm,
rider, depending how often you're competing, you're trying to manage a business at home, and you're trying to partner with brands and do what's best to align yourself with the brand, keeping yourself authentic and, um, you know, sort of integrating into the community as well. There's a lot of things going
sure.
on there, I think, for athletes that
Yeah.
I know that you probably get into more
Yeah,
specifics of,
sure.
but I think having the relationship and having been being a rider, I still ride. I haven't competed in a while, but still riding. You have to be able to appreciate what those timelines and what the rider's
Yeah.
needs are too.
So, from a professional perspective, what does that look like for you so that my audience understands, like, okay, this is why Denise invited Nicole to talk specifically about this topic? I'm curious, what does that look like for you, or how did you get into that piece of it?
It's so interesting. A lot of these things I haven't gone out and have to search for myself, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people have come to me really for the most part because I've worked with them in other aspects,
Yeah.
or it's just, we get along well, or they feel like they're being heard, or trying to achieve what their goals are, or trying to help
Yeah.
them maybe align better with what they're trying to do, or redirect them maybe in a different way.
Hmm. Okay. Okay, so if what I'm hearing you say then is you're like, "Denise, don't send people to me. I'm not trying to book more clients, but I do help athletes in the equine space manage, like, partnerships and those types of things." Is that what I'm hearing you correctly? Like, that's what it looks like for you, and that's what you can speak into for us?
Yes, and I have done a lot of that. I think for right now, I'm not taking that on because I
Yeah.
feel because I've sort of, committed to actually joining Equestic, but we're also actually
Right.
working with athletes as
Yes.
well. So, trying to help, them in that way, and maybe how to, from the athlete perspective, how to work better
Mhm,
with brands, or,
mhm,
how we can help the athlete as well. I think it's a two-way street there because,
mhm,
athletes themselves, there's a lot going on for them, whether they're on the road constantly, or they have a business at home that they're also managing, whether they have a load full of clients, a barn full of horses. Again, that's all like time management. How can we help them better,
mhm.
and athletes, whether you're on the side of the athlete, representing them, or the side of a brand that wants to,
Right.
have the partner with the athlete.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that leads us into what I want to talk about because I wanted people to know your background and I also wanted them to know like why I invited you to talk specifically on this topic because you do have a unique understanding of the business of being an athlete in the equine industry. And part of that understanding is what you just mentioned that the business of being an athlete is actually one of the facets. It's not the only facet, right? When it comes to the business of what you do. So the brand partnerships are a piece of it, the clients that you have are a piece of it, the competing is a piece of it, right? So we're going to hone in specifically today on just that piece of understanding that being an athlete, that is a part of your business. It's not quote unquote just a part of what you do, it's part of your business. So let's define who we're talking to and about when we talk about this, okay? Because it is a unique topic. I'm excited for this episode because it's not something we've spoken to specifically, but I know it's something that many horse business owners, variety of sizes, variety of disciplines, and areas in the industry, Western or English, that are listening and that are saying, okay, I've wanted to have brand partnerships, right? I do coach and I ride and some are at high levels and some are not. And I think that's what's interesting about digital marketing and about what we have available now is it doesn't have to be at the most elite level in order for you to see that that could be a piece and part of your business. So tell me from your perspective and your experience who this concept of being an athlete and building your business around it is for and maybe some of the mindset shifts that are required to actually approach what they do as a business.
Well, I think you've almost just said it right there. Approach it as a business.
Mm,
I think a lot of riders just say, right, their dream is to own a barn and they want to have a barn full of horses and they're going to have all these clients. But I think when you actually do the math, really look at what your business looks like and what your business model is. And even as far as scalability, I think we all know riders that, I mean, horses are 24/7 and staff is not always easily obtained depending on your region, and those things can take quite a lot out of you, I think, as an athlete. So I think actually stepping back and looking at as a business, almost as not you, is
mm,
very important. And they people and riders and athletes are their own brand. And, how do they want to be represented? So I think being able to manage what that business model looks like in each aspect, meaning, are you being the best athlete you can be? Do you want to go out and compete? How are you going to, manage that? All right. Are you more about coaching? Some people excel at that. And, maybe their students don't want to go out and compete. Some do, there's a whole management factor there. But I think uh, being true to yourself and real as far as a business, because it's challenging. And think about what your true goals are as a business, whether you're just really wanting to be a competitor, you really want to coach,
mhm.
are you going to combine the two? Are you just a training facility? I think be clear in your intentions on that.
That's so smart, and that's certainly something I coach on too, right? Is deciding ahead of time what's your definition of success because it is so unique and subjective, and especially in the world of competing, it can be so easy to go to that show, whatever the next big show is for you, right? The levels are different, but when you go there and you start seeing what everyone else is doing, how many horses they have in their program, how many riders they're coaching, how many assistants they have, all of those things, it can be very easy to get caught up in that idea of that's what success means, right? Versus deciding from the beginning, this is what success means for me, my family, and my business, and then building out from that.
And I totally agree because honestly, burnout can be a big effect in
Definitely.
this sport because there's so many highs and there can be so many lows. As we all know
Mhm.
with horses, you can be literally at the top of the game one day and everything can come crashing down the next day. A sick
Yeah.
horse or something happens. So it's I think aside from other sports, as we know, I mean, we've got two athletes, we've got animals to take care of, and we're
Right.
emotionally attached. And I'd like to hope that we are because that's why we're doing it in the sport for passion for the horses. And
Mhm.
we have to really do what's in the best interest of the horses. And I think, if you feel stretched and you really don't feel it, sometimes as we've seen riders are taking a step back even or maybe taking a break because they had to kind of find their passion again. They got caught up in the real, kind of trying to keep everybody happy and trying to manage so many things where they've lost that their own passion and what they kind of why they wanna do this in the first place. So I
Mhm.
think that's very important for the sport actually in itself, and that goes into how you're representing yourself even on social media and what your narrative and your story is. Like, that's a big piece of it, and that's also why brands might want not to align with you.
Yeah.
Think about the intention, I think.
Yeah, that's so good. So good, Nicole. Okay, so we've talked about the definition, the importance of approaching it as a business. And what I love is your rich history. So you've seen the way athletes do business well or not well, or opportunities that have been presented. So tell us, for those that are listening, what are some of those opportunities for those who are riding, who are the athlete in the equine industry? They are competing, they're building out their business. When you think about that, what are some of the opportunities that they may not be seeing or taking advantage of yet?
I think stay approachable. Um, don't give into this elitism mentality.
Mm,
I think because having come from a non-horsey family and now being able to say that I have close friends that are people that I only read about in books. And I've been really lucky and blessed in my career to be able to say that. But I feel even working on the other side of the professional ropes and working with so many riders, there are some that are very approachable and some that aren't so much. And I think uh, in the mindset of where our sport is today, no matter what discipline, and integrating with maybe outside of the sport, look at what the other sports and the other athletes are doing. I think we have to be, um, people have to have a connection with you, right? It's not just reading about you because you're a famous person, you've just won a huge Grand Prix. Um, but take the time out actually to talk to your followers, talk to the regular people. Don't feel that you are too good for that because maybe you're their hero and don't disappoint. So I would say really be authentic, um, kind of be consistent in that. Be really good with even what you want to do with the sport, moving forward in the sport, because that affects your career as well. And how you are defined as a role model and as an athlete. I think that's really, really important. To stay connected with your followers. Whether it's a fan that wants to come up with you at a horse show and talk to you, or maybe get your ideas, take the time out to do that. A lot of riders are just kind of walking with their heads down. They don't even want to make eye contact with anybody. They're going from ring to
Yeah.
ring, and I get it. But it's the followers and the fans that make it also very special for you. So don't forget them.
Yeah, that's really good. I didn't expect you to say that, honestly. I was like, my mind just goes straight to business, but I think that's such an important piece because you're right. So many of those competing and writing, their mind is similar to what I was, like straight to business, right? But business, as you said very early on in your story, is about relationships. It is
Hmm.
about connection. And whether you like it or not, you are building a personal brand, as you said earlier. And so a part of that personal brand is 100% how you're interacting and engaging with people. And if you want to build brand partnerships, it does go beyond, quote unquote, just the trophies that you're bringing home, right? It goes beyond the scores. It goes beyond that because those long-term relationships really are what's going to continue that for your business aspect. It's not just how you're showing up. Are there other areas or specific actually, I'm gonna phrase that differently because as you were talking, I would love for you to talk specifically to that idea. For those that have perhaps thought they didn't have to build a personal brand because really it's just about how I show up in the show pen or in the arena or on the field, wherever it is that they're competing, they're thinking my brand is my results, right? But when you think about your business as a whole and approaching it as a business, it is larger than that. Can you speak to that for us?
I think it's much larger than that. I think your accolades are one thing. You're winning Grand Prix. Your talent has gotten you there. That's going to get you more horses, and then the sponsors want to align with you because there's more visibility in the ring. And then you're thinking about the broader picture because of it's you're on TV and it's highlighting the sport and how you're helping there. Um, but I think the reason brands want that is one aspect of it because of that visibility. But if you combine it with being really authentic and genuine and in your storytelling and inviting people into your lives or behind the scenes, it's so much more relatable. I think that really works on both sides. It develops your brand as a person and as a rider, and how much you love the horses and what it takes in your day. It's not like, okay, you're just going to show up at a horse show and you get on a horse and you ride it and you go to the Grand Prix. It's not. And I think for other people looking from the outside of the sport looking in, people always, oh, it's easy. They just, spend $1 million on a horse and you're going to go out and win it. No, you've got to ride it. You are putting in those hours. You are getting up at the crack of dawn. You are traveling to a show. There's so much more to it than that. And I think
Yeah.
being authentic and who you are as a personal brand attracts the business brands as well as the sponsors or the owners, and having that I think carries over into just creating a better place for the sport and as a representative of equestrian sport in general from
Yeah,
the outside world looking in, which is important, especially right
that
now.
is 100%. That's so true. And I'm curious for you, Nicole, what you would say that you believe how that has transformed or transitioned over time. Because as you said, starting early on, right, when it was people weren't sure that it was all going to catch on, the way that equine athletes were building a business then, 20 years ago, 30 years ago versus now, how would you say that that's different? And how would you say some people are getting left behind from what you're seeing?
It's so completely different. I mean, it is worlds apart. I think obviously the internet changed everything. I mean, back then you were waiting for your chronicle to arrive to read, the latest,
Yeah.
sports. But that was still a week later than something and that happened, right? I mean, that was actually what led me to create my equestrian website news service because I wanted the people to know what happened on the day and I wanted to make it feel like they were there with me. That was my intention. Now with the internet, everything kind of got daily. Now with social media, it's by the minute, right? I mean, everything's fast. People's interest, your attention span is 3 seconds now. It's so quick. So now everything's fast forward. And how do you change that model versus where maybe before it was um, your accolades just in the ring and now with social media in a good and a bad way, you have to be so cautious. And having been at, let's say, the FEI Sports Forum 2 weeks ago, and those questions came up on, especially for riders, in this day of social media, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your brand? People can put something out there about you, which is true or not true. And how do you protect yourself from that? And how do you recover? Because it's a challenging place. I think emotionally, mentally as well for the game. You're trying to focus on a competition or focus on your students or focus on your horses, and then this noise is always coming in the back of your mind, and that I think that's a challenge for riders and athletes as well is and brands because then they're affiliated with a rider. So that is cross platforms everything. So I think that the change has been vast and gosh, I hope it doesn't get faster. It's
So given that, what you just said, like, I think for those listening, that is some of the tension that I know many are trying to manage, right? I mean, I had a guest, or no, I think I was a guest on her podcast. She was on mine, then I was on hers. I can't remember where our conversation landed, which one, but we were talking about just that idea that horse people are awesome and horse people can be judgy. And
Yeah.
so, for even the average person to just hesitate to put their stuff online because they know the comments are going to come in about, the tools they're using or where their leg position was, or, every little nuance is judged in a lot of ways. Well, for athletes, they can't avoid that, right? It's going to be online. So if you're talking to an athlete, again, looking at this from a business perspective as well and a long-term perspective, how would you, not that you're a coach, but I have a feeling you provide some of that across the table coaching. How do you coach people to manage that chatter, to manage that tension and still stay focused on that end goal?
Well, and that's a really interesting point because 3 weeks ago now, with Requestic, but we actually did a forum called the Future of Coaching. And we had a large number of panelists talking about this, all top names in the sport. We had Richard Davison, who's British dressage 4-time Olympian. He's an FDI commentator. We had Di Lampard, who's coach of the British show jumping team. We had Francois Mati Jr., who's the president of the International Jumping Riders Club, and now also chef d'équipe of the Spanish team. And we had Wout Jan van der Schans, who's coach of the Dutch team for the show jumping, and Lawrence Van Laren, who is the technical director of KNHS. And that was a huge topic of conversation. Uh, how not just the riders think about it, but the coaches do too. You can't just go and grab someone's leg and reposition it. There's a whole uh, different way of thinking. And I think for the different generations, how everyone has to stop and think about what they're doing now. I would recommend that for riders and athletes as well as for the coaches, and how do we protect ourselves? So take an extra minute. Assume that there's a camera on you for every single minute of your life, really, almost. And are you doing the best, presenting yourself in the best way possible? Are you doing the right thing, even when you think it might be set? Think about it just for another second, but because everybody is thinking about it, because we are all on camera all the time, and if it's walking down the street, for goodness sakes, in a city. So especially with horses, especially with horse welfare, absolutely should be the top. The front of your mind. Are you always doing what's best? And sometimes you really are, and sometimes things are taken out of context. But I think this was also a topic of discussion at the FEI Sports Forum. How does the we protect ourselves also at a sport. How do we protect the athletes a little bit better? How do we change that narrative or hold there's some sort of accountability in a positive or a negative light, whether it's someone who's accusing of something that's not true? That negative narrative can probably take a much more of a snowball effect than a good narrative. People are always willing to jump on that bandwagon. So I think and that can affect your brand alignment and your sponsorships.
100%.
So I would say, you know, really think twice about what you're doing. Assume you're always being watched. Um, it's a shame in a lot of ways because I think there's a lot of very good athletes and horsemen that are being put in a incorrect light, or being accused of something. I'm not saying there aren't valid situations here, but I think as a sport, it's been how do we manage this? We have two athletes. It's different than another sport. It's different than if
Yeah.
you're an ice skater or a gymnast or a skier. We have two athletes in this, and an animal. People are passionate about animals as they should be. So I would just, really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it as your
And I'm
intention.
curious. Okay, first of all, thank you. That was a really thoughtful, thorough response, and I love that you guys are having those conversations and leading the way in that. So, so important. I'm curious for you from your PR background perspective. Say someone does make it so maybe we're not those that are listening to this podcast likely are not showing up on national television. Some maybe, most are not. Most are small business owners who are competing at higher levels, but maybe it's a world show, maybe not always international scale. And yet they still can get rattled from the chatter, right? So, from your PR perspective, I'm curious what you would say to those who are listening and saying, okay, but I shared this in this video and the comments are just like sucking my energy dry. From a PR perspective, do you suggest engaging when people are questioning your methods and asking all of these questions and just being trolls? Let's just be honest. Some of them are just
Mm,
being trolls.
they are.
Do you, from a PR perspective, say, look, the more you I guess I would say this too. There's option A and option B in my mind for most of those, right? Option A is you just ignore it, keep doing your thing, keep your head in the sand. Not keep your head in the sand, I'm sorry, keep your head on the eye on the prize, not in the sand. Keep moving forward, but just not address it, right? Delete the comments, ignore, keep going. Or you have option B, you have people that are like, no, I need to defend myself. So I'm going to engage. I'm going to make sure that they know that. In your experience, because you've seen a lot through the years, how would you advise them to work through that?
So I think you can let's say there's a social media post and there's can be thousands of comments. Like, honestly,
Mhm.
maybe address it in a different way is think about what your response is, but do it in your own narrative. Don't start addressing the trolls and getting caught up in that because that is just going to deplete you of your mental energy and honestly, probably your soul as well. Because honestly, sometimes people don't even take the time out to read the initial
So
content.
true.
They're just going to feed on someone else's content, and that can just go haywire. So, it is a challenging situation, touch wood. Thankfully, I've personally not been in that situation, but I have seen the trauma that for other athletes who have been, because it is traumatic. They spent a lifetime building something, and it can be taken down in an instant and in a complete moment, of a brain fog or a lapse, of something that's not intentional. But I think if you put it in that way and that narrative in a very honest and genuine way and try to explain I would work with your team if you have a team, a social media team that you have the perspectives on, but try and address it in a very professional way, honest way to a degree, and don't feed into every single troll. It's impossible. And honestly, I think a lot of times people are more excited about being negative than they are being positive, which is a shame. But we know that, and so how do we
Mhm.
work with that? So I think it's a matter of addressing it in an honest and open way, being apologetic, if it takes that. Absolutely. We all make mistakes. We're human.
Mhm.
And we all know that whether it's a horse and rider, I think some sports are really put under a microscope more than the others. I think dressage is put under much more of a microscope than the other disciplines for whatever reason. I don't know. I think the dressage keyboard hobbyists at home just seem to want to have a voice in all of this. But there's issues in all the disciplines. It doesn't matter what it is. But I think for those athletes that do come under the scrutiny address it in a kind and open way that people feel like you're being genuine.
That's so good, and it really reminds me of what you said earlier, Nicole, about that authenticity and the importance of that because it gives them a glimpse of who you are as a human, and so when something happens, whether it's a mistake or something that's completely taken out of context and then thrown out there, then those who really care about your character and care about following you, like, they'll know what that character is and what your heart is,
Mhm.
and so that helps so much with that piece of it, so it really builds that trust. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
go
have
ahead.
to build trust. You can't make everybody happy all the
Yeah.
time. You can only try the best that you can do.
Yeah, 100%. So tell us, I want to pretend like I told you earlier. I said if we were sitting together at coffee and I'm asking you these questions, I'm confident that you would be able to give some solid advice to those business owners who are athletes, who are writing, and then also coaching, and also have a barn full of horses. Right? It's all of those pieces together. But today, specifically, with this idea of being an athlete in the equine industry and building a business around that, what are some of the lessons learned or things to know that you like to share with those who are listening, given what you've seen and experienced and how you've been able to work with others and building their partnerships and businesses as athletes?
I think, it's really about education, right? A lot of it. I think educate yourself in all these different aspects of it, whether it's building the business, building relationships with the brand, working with your owners, with your students, with your horses. But, stay educated. And I think which I've mentioned a bunch of times, be real, engage your audience. I think you have to, in this day of business, especially the younger, lesser known athletes or the ones that are up and comers, is how to build your brand, using social media, using your website. I always have to say to people, update your website. People do
Yeah.
look at it as far as a business.
Yes.
People do look at it. Sometimes as a brand looking to partner with an athlete or
Mhm.
seeing what other brands are doing or who they may be already partnered with.
Yeah.
People do look at it. And I think, having your news up to date or people staying, it is hugely about social media, but those two places correlate. And be real with your audience. I think as far as uh, social media or building a brand or building a business, doesn't have to look perfect all the time.
Mhm.
Show some behind the scenes, show what it
Yeah.
takes. This is a hard, difficult sport, where it's 24/7. You might be up in the middle of the night and a horse is sick or whatever. And I think, or the funny outtakes, so you are relatable. I think that works really great for yourself as a brand and for the other brands that are partnering with you. um, think about your content. Have someone help you. I think with the business side of it, because it is there are only so many hours in a day, and I think nowadays you need to have it. I know people hate it. A lot of times they don't want to do it, but it's necessary, and it's important for your business itself. Whether that's even a boarding facility, and you're trying to scale up, or your students. Think about your brand as a model like that, because there's only so much of you to go around. So I would say, and if you stay educated as an instructor, if that's what you're doing as a rider, growing in depth like that, there's technology is playing a huge part of this now. Um, and it's there to help, and I think it's there to be utilized. That was actually another important topic that we talked about in the Future of Coaching Forum, um, was the educational aspect of it, but just as the sport itself and how technology can help the athletes and also the horses,
Mhm.
right? We've got to do what's best for our horses, and our eyes, are one part of that. And, feeling a horse or how to learn how to ride better. I think that using different strategies and available pieces that are available now can enhance your business or you as a writer,
Mhm.
and use an educator and to take advantage of all those pieces that are available to you now.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. I'm curious, Nicole, what you would say for those who are listening and saying, okay, so I'm doing the personal branding and I want brand sponsorships, but I don't know where to start. What would you tell them? How do you advise athletes to go about finding a brand to sponsor them?
I think reaching out to brands and telling them your personal story and why you want to align with them,
Mm,
connect with them on their level, like be authentic about uh, you. why you love their breeches, why you love their boots, why you love their shirts, really tell them why you love it. I think brands really love that connection and that storytelling, because that's going to relate in the storytelling of you representing your product, their product, sorry.
Mhm.
And they want that to be real and authentic, and that is happened to me on both sides of the coin. And working as sponsoring a rider,
Yeah.
where okay, now they're just trying to fulfill a contract. They have so many social media posts to do a month.
Yeah.
Gosh, they are super busy, and if the content's not great, that's not gonna make you look good or the brand look good, right?
Right.
So if they're think about what your intention is and how you're gonna represent yourself and what you're gonna do for them, especially if you're
Mhm.
an up-and-coming rider and don't necessarily, you're not in the winner's circle all the time. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily looking for that. They're looking for good storytelling.
Yeah.
They're looking for
That's
that
true.
real connection because they're looking for other riders like you
Mhm.
or people that are gonna look up to you to relate. You've gotta be relatable. And, I think that's getting much, much better now, but that's what brands are looking for is how are you gonna fit in with their brand? How are you gonna represent them as a brand? Super
That's
important.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So I'm curious, this is a question I get, and you may say, Denise, it depends, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because this is a question I've gotten more than once from people that I'm coaching and who have had either a brand reach out to them or they wanted to start reaching out to brands. And they're saying, Denise, it's overwhelming to figure out what you just mentioned earlier. What do I offer them? What should I expect? Should I expect a payment or should I just expect free product? Is there a standard? Unfortunately, I have told them what you're probably going to tell me, but I still want to hear your insight is it depends, right? There are many variables, but I'd like to hear from your perspective, given you've worked with brands and now, as you said, now you're on the end of where you are the sponsor. What are some of those variables that you look at, or how do you make those determinations so we can educate those listening and that how they manage that relationship?
So I think it's gonna so what brands are gonna look for is they're gonna look at your social media. You need to have social media. And it really is a lot about numbers. Okay, so you can build on your number of followers. You don't necessarily have to have the biggest numbers, but if you have 200 followers, you probably want to build on that. Unless you have this amazing community that you really feel that everyone who follows you is going to buy whatever you say, and that can sometimes be the case. But you still have to have a good storytelling narrative to entice people to do it. I've worked with writers that have sometimes hundreds of thousands of followers, to be honest. And it's not a great conversion, or a great partnership. So I think build up your story, build up your social media, make it really look authentic and real, and create some pieces they're gonna look at. They're gonna sort of judge you by that, and I think then aligning with those brands, that's gonna help you build your social media, but I think really focus on building your social media and your storytelling first, and it doesn't always have to be out of the ring. Um, some of these, influencers have been, I don't know, bringing their being authentic with their horses or, storytelling or a hard day or whatever, but I think,
Mhm.
when you wanna approach a brand, be a little bit prepared, and as far as the, part where should I get paid? Should I just expect product? I think it depends on your level. I think for a rider that's maybe a smaller rider, doesn't have maybe such a big influence or a large following, maybe a large number of horses or a lot of visibility in social media or on regular media, you will probably expect product as far as what that is. I would say the larger scale riders or the big athletes, and honestly, they don't need product really as much anymore. They have as many blankets as they probably could manage.
So true.
Or,
Yeah.
I think saddles is one thing, boots, I think it depends on the product, but I think, what riders, I would say that it's hard to say that from the perspective of a brand wanting to partner with riders,
Mhm.
and maybe there's a combination of both, and it certainly depends on the rider, and it certainly depends on their numbers on social media, and it certainly depends on their connection with, their own, followers. It all
Mhm.
has an effect, and there's all data and statistics that are helpful now that can judge that, but it's a little bit of a test. So I would say for the young ones coming up, it's probably just gonna be, product, which they'd probably be delighted with. you know?
Sure.
Why
And I
not?
would guess it can be something you can grow from, right? So that's the thing. And
Mhm.
that was my next question to you in terms of the tangibles. Typically for you, what you see, would it be like a 6-month contract? Would it be just a certain number of posts within a certain time period? What kinds of agreements are you seeing are common? I know it's again, it's going to vary, but across the board, right? Are you seeing people saying, let's try it for 3 months, let's try it for 6 months, and then reevaluate? What is that looking like?
I think a lot of brands will do short-term alignments to start with just to see how it tests out and what that looks like, and then can be build on it and add it on. I think, for, like, the long-term commitments, and I'm not talking about, like, say, the big name riders, smaller name riders, I think they're gonna say, "Okay," or just influencers, so you have,
Mhm.
like, competitors or you have some influencers, maybe there's a combination of both, and it depends on also what let's test it out. Let's see how it does, how it converts, how good the content is, and then we go from there. It's a little bit safer, and also for the athlete, do they like working with the brand? You
Yeah.
know? Do they wanna have a long-term commitment? Maybe it's just a complete nightmare, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Geez, I wish I'd never done this, and now I have this commitment." Not that there's not an out, depending on what your contract is.
Yeah.
I think the number of, what the requirements are, the number of posts, be authentic, what you can also manage. If you promise a lot and you can't deliver, it's not good for you either.
So true. Yeah, that's really good. Talk to me one more thing, and then I know you've been so generous with your time. Tips for managing those brand relationships. Again, as you talked about earlier, time management is a key piece, right? They are writing, they are training, they are coaching, and now they're a content creator and they're doing these things and they're trying to keep up a brand relationship. What are some tips that you would give those who are managing those brand relationships to really um, to keep them solid?
Yeah, I that's a tough thing. I think time management is probably number 1 on the list. And I would say that from a perspective of a rider who's trying to break in and trying to be all and do all,
Mhm.
or even the top athletes that honestly don't have the time either. They really don't. They're managing their very busy competition schedule. They're going from place to place. They're literally even if they've just won a Grand Prix, they're ready to run out of a media room because they looking at the clock because maybe they're jumping on a plane going to another show. So I think having a team to help you do that, so that kind of takes some of that pressure off of you, that you feel that, and I understand there's cost that's associated with that, but I think be real to yourself of what that cost and value actually is to you.
Mm.
If it costs you, what you're making in some lessons, but the value is great for your personal brand, it's worth the investment. Again, look at it as a business perspective, as a business cost to you if that's what you're looking to do. Time is a huge factor. Um, I would say get the help and make sure
Mhm.
you align with someone that's, doing the good content, you know? Um, don't enter into a long-term contract either.
Mm, yeah. No, I appreciate that you said that. That's such a good point. Don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. But it also brings me back to what we talked about earlier, that idea of success being subjective. You obviously are very cornered into the English market, but even in my mind, I'm thinking for those that listen that are in the Western world, I think of the NFR, the National Finals Rodeo. And you look at these schedules. I follow just a few of the people just to kind of see how their content they're creating and things like that. And at the event, right, at the NFR is like 10 days, I think, of actual competition, and they are busy. It's not just the nightly competition and it's not just their own horses they're carrying. They have to be at the signings. They have to be doing all of these extra things. So we've talked a lot about the content creation, but in addition to that, there may be other things, right, that are managing that time and energy and capacity to still also show up and do what you've promised to do, which is compete and do your best. So there's that piece of time management even that I think it's important for people to listen to and think about when we talk about success being subjective, right? And knowing is having the whole line of sponsors on your arm your ideal of success when you're at the event and you're feeling stressed to the max and you're not, if it's messing with the way you're able to compete and ride, then again, going back to what's success to me? Am I really aligned with all of these brands? Instead of more is better, being intentional, like we talked about in the very beginning. So I think that really brings it home to what you said in the very beginning.
I totally agree with you, and the NFR, like, I think that's on my list to go because that looks incredible,
Yeah.
and I think it's so also relatable with the general public too. I mean, it's such a huge event. I mean, it's vast. I would love to see that sort of um, excitement from sport for the English side sports too. Again, I think there's a relatability there to that, you know? And honestly, I think those cowgirls are the coolest ever. I really do. I don't care if they're just walking the sidelines or they're in the competition arena, but they're cool. And I think our the English side of the sport could take away a lot from the Western side of the sport, to be honest. And I think they've done a great job even aligning with sponsors and TV and all this sort of things that is very positive for the athlete and for the brands and for the sport in itself. But I think going back to what you said about where the athletes are really good about being at signings, being in the presence of the public, that is super important. And I'm not sure on the English side of things that the riders are doing that enough.
Mhm,
I think it's very important to take the time out to talk to the media, even though I know they hate it and they really can't wait to get back to the barn. But for the sport as a whole, for yourself as a brand, for the sport as a whole, it's super important to promote yourself and the sport in general because, I think it's really challenging when you go to a press conference and stuff, and for the riders too, the media, asking questions, or did the media feel intimidated not to ask the questions, or will the riders take time out to meet with them after, or go to autograph signings and things like that. And some are very good about it, and some are not. Some are, but also the time frame of how to focus on for the riders, that goes down to sports psychology as well, how to
mhm,
manage this mentally. I've chatted with a lot of these sports psychologists. That's a whole other deep dive, which I think also can help with the riders, not only in their competition mode, but how to handle these things on social media, how to handle the perception of yourselves. I think that's also a very important piece to think about, but also be able to mentally do your competition thing, be there for your horse. Your horse is who you're
mhm,
having a conversation then with at the time of a
mhm.
competition. So all of those things are a very integral part, and I think it's really interesting to see that perspective from NFR and how they're doing it. And I think there's a lot of good takeaways from that.
Yeah, so true. Okay, Nicole, I want to just ask you open-endedly if you're at the end and, is there anything else that you feel like those who are listening should know about approaching the business of being an athlete in the equine industry?
So approaching the business as an athlete, and so I think connecting with your uh, not just the media or your community or whatever, but I think going on the education thing and also going back to the business and the scalability, thinking about your give back to the sport as an athlete as well,
Mhm,
meaning you've acquired all this knowledge. Maybe this is a little bit of an older, not an older athlete, but an athlete. You're acquiring knowledge the whole way, right? You're taking lessons from whatever age you've clinicked with, with so many top riders or whatever you do. Share the education, but that can also be scalable, right? I think education is it can be scalable, and h- how do you manage that, and thinking also about that in your business model, because you can't be all places in one time. And I've had this with a lot of professional riders. How do I scale my business? They've been in the business for 30, 40 years. What's next? But I also have had really interesting conversations with top riders that say, I feel very passionate about giving back to the community,
mhm,
sharing my education, and helping others that maybe not so lucky or fortunate or financially able to do that. And I think education is key as horse being of horsemanship and for your business. um and just as a little side piece, I think on the education side of it, that now working with Equestic, which is why I wanted to come on with them. They're so techy and so business and about education, um, because there's education about learning better things about your horse as far as the biomechanics and how you can do better for your horse, which I think every rider should do and should know, or learn something you don't know, which is always good. Um, the other thing about education, which is interesting, is we as writers invest in our education as lifelong equestrians. How, if you had to put a number on that, how much would you have spent in your education? It's really probably a lot more than you'd have been going to college, right? Don't think of it as, every lesson that you have taken or that someone else is taking from you is valuable. And ha- honestly, if you think about it, you take a lesson. By the time you've untacked, how much do you remember? Like, truly, how much do you remember? You've just paid $100 for a lesson. And if you were going to school and college and you've paid for a class, what are you doing? You're sitting there taking notes, right? Because you're going to go home and study those notes because there's a test coming up. Same way as, let's say, you're going to a competition. If you compete, how do you make the most of that education that you're investing in? That's an investment, and that's a number. When you buy an educated horse, that's,
Mhm.
I don't know, one in a bunch of rings, and you're going to get on and ride it, or whatever. That horse also has an investment and an education. Those are valuable pieces of a business model, and not something to be taken lightly. So I think, as far as, how do you better your education? How do you better your students' education? What is the takeaway from that? And how can you expand? And how can that be scalable? Um, and as a little plug, as far as education wise, now we have a product, which is why I jumped on board with Questic, called the EQ Coach Copilot. And this is incredible because I've worked with London Gray. She does dressage for kids. One of her big things and other writers is about journaling, taking notes after your lesson, maximizing your
Mhm.
investment, because that's what it is. This does it for you. You have a
Mm.
takeaway after every lesson. You have a takeaway from your investment. You
Mhm.
have a takeaway that you can go home. You should absolutely watch your videos because that's all about the visualization. For a rider's perspective, you now have a way to maximize on your investment and kind of relive and listen to it basically extracts the audio of your lesson and creates a whole text summary of your lesson. It journalizes for you.
Mhm.
You have a takeaway to study. You have a takeaway for your lesson and for your investment. For the coaches, this actually helps them with scalability because this can actually work remotely as well. Um, and it also helps coaches because now they know, okay, this is what we did this week. They may not be seeing you for a week or 2 weeks because maybe you can't afford it. You've invested a lot in your education. You can only afford a lesson for so much. What's happening in between? And geez, what did we work on last time?
Mhm.
How many coaches walk in the arena and go, what are we doing today? And the router goes, I don't know. Right?
Mhm.
Think about
Mhm.
your intention and your education.
Mhm.
Think about that
Yeah.
as a number.
So I love that you said that about scalability because that's the thing. It is that long-term perspective, right? Is as you're building a business. So thinking about 100%, yes, how you're educating your clients. And I love that there are so many options available with tech and with what you're doing as well. And so you mentioned, people talking to you after 30 years, like, what do I do now? And so you have the opportunity, those who are listening, to say, okay, long term, how do I want to build this as a business that's going to help me long term? And it doesn't have to look like everybody else's, but you do have ways of, capturing your capital, your, I'm losing my words, Nicole, the intellectual capital. That's I'm like the intellectual capital that you have as a writer, as a competitor, that you can then package and turn that into a product and a service, and that can be part of your sustainable plan. So I love that. Think long term. Such good advice. Okay, Nicole, before we go, tell everyone where they can find you online. Of course, I will link to Equestic and link to you on LinkedIn. But where would you like me to send people as we leave and as they are pulling out their phones to go find you?
Oh, well, geez, I'm on social media everywhere. Everybody can find me. And Nicole Graf on Facebook. I'm on Aquestic as well, having joined as their chief marketing officer and and we're going to be also, doing some things with events on an educational level, partnerships for education.
Okay.
So that's going to be great. So you could probably see me at some events. But also
Awesome.
happy to reach out. Happy to help and answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you. You've been so generous. I really appreciate it.
And thanks, Denise. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. All right, guys, I so hope that you enjoyed getting to know Nicole and learning from her as much as I did. Of course, I will have the highlights of our conversation on the show notes for this episode as well. So if she shared something and you think you didn't catch it, or you want to just go see what I took away as the highlights, then you can go to Storm, Lily.com/215 for episode 215. And I will also, of course, link to Nicole from there on LinkedIn, and the other things that she had mentioned for Equestic, I will link on that on the show notes also. And then, of course, if you have not yet, go and grab your free roadmap. It is the Equine Entrepreneur's Roadmap to grow a sustainable business without burning out. And you can get that at stormlily.com/map, or of course, when you go to the show notes, it will be there as well. This is a brand new resource as of right now, when this is publishing, that I've created just for you, just for the equine entrepreneurs that I get to meet with and hear from on a regular basis that are wanting to build and grow something sustainable. You're tired of chasing trends and you want to build and grow with intention and with purpose and with confidence. And so having this roadmap for you, my goal is that you will have a confidence about the decisions that you are making in your business. So again, just go to stormlily.com/map and get that today. Share this episode with a friend who has come to mind as you were listening, and stay tuned and stay subscribed as I will continue to bring you new episodes every week here on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day.